Okay, we're going to finish up with ecology and look at chapter 56. So I want you to pause the video and go through the 3 questions you see in front of you and be ready to bring them to discussion tomorrow. So again, this is chapter 56, which is conservation biology and global change. What you need to know the value of biodiversity and the major human threats to it, and how human activity is changing the earth. So to start off, we need to define what conservation biology is, and this is a goal-oriented science that seeks to counter the biological or biodiversity crisis, the current rapid decrease in the Earth's variety of life. Extinction is a natural phenomenon that has been occurring obviously since life evolved on Earth. The current rate of extinction is what underlies the biodiversity crisis. A high rate of species extinction is being caused by humans. And this is probably stuff you guys already know. So, there's 3 levels of biodiversity: genetic, species, and ecosystem. Genetic diversity comprises not only of individual genetic variation within a population, but also the genetic variation between populations that is often associated with adaptations to local conditions. If one population becomes extinct, then a species may have lost some of the genetic diversity that makes microevolution possible. Species diversity is the variety of species in an ecosystem or across the biosphere. As more species are lost to extinction, species diversity in turn decreases. An endangered species is one that is quote-unquote in danger of extinction throughout all or a significant portion of its range. The last one is ecosystem diversity, which is the variety of the biosphere's ecosystems is the 3rd level of biological diversity. Because of the many interactions between populations of different species in an ecosystem, the local extinction of one species can have a negative impact on the other species in an ecosystem. So the 4 major threats to biodiversity are habitat loss, introduced species, overexploitation or overharvesting, and global change. So habitat loss is human alteration of a habitat is the single greatest threat to biodiversity. There are many things human activities threaten biodiversity on local, regional, and global scales. Human alteration of a habitat is the single greatest threat to biodiversity throughout the biosphere. Habitat loss has been brought about by agriculture, urban development, forestry, mining, and pollution. Habitat loss is also a major threat to aquatic biodiversity. About 70% of the coral reefs among the Earth's most species-rich aquatic communities have been damaged by human activities. The second one is introduced species, which is invasive, non-native, or exotic species. Introduced species, also called exotic species, are those that humans move intentionally or accidentally from a species' native location to new geographic regions. Human travel by ship and airplane has accelerated the transplant of species. Free from predators, parasites, and pathogens that limit their population in their native habitats, such as transplanted species, may spread rapidly through a new region. Humans have deliberately introduced many species with a good intention but disastrous effects. An Asian plant called kudzu, Kudzu, which the U.S. Department of Agriculture once introduced in southern United States to help control erosion, has taken over large areas of the landscape there. The 3rd major threat to biodiversity is overharvesting or overexploitation. The term overharvesting refers generally to the harvesting of wild organisms at rates exceeding the ability of their population to rebound. Species with restricted habitats, such as small islands, are particularly vulnerable to overharvesting. Also susceptible to overharvesting are the large organisms with low reproductive rates, such as elephant, whales, and rhinoceroses. The decline in the Earth's largest terrestrial animals, like the African elephant, is a classic example of the impact of overhunting. The last one is global change. The 4th threat to biodiversity, global change, alters the fabric of the Earth's ecosystem at regional to global scales. One of the first types of global change to cause concern was acid precipitation, which is rain, sleet, snow, or fog with a pH less than 5.2. The burning of wood and fossil fuels releases oxides of sulfur and nitrogen that react with water, forming sulfuric and nitric acids. The acids eventually fall to Earth's surface, harming some aquatic and terrestrial organisms. Here we have just some pictures of acid rain in a forest or on a statue. On the left it was taken in 1908, on the right in 1968. In fragmented habitats, the presence of movement corridors or a narrow strip or series of small clumps of habitat connecting otherwise isolated patches can be extremely important for conserving biodiversity. Bridges or tunnels, for instance, can reduce the number of animals killed trying to cross highways. Movement corridors can also promote dispersal and reduce inbreeding in declining populations. Corridors have been shown to increase the exchange of individuals among populations of many organisms, including butterflies, voles, and aquatic plants. In deciding which areas of high conservation priority, biologists often focus on hotspots of biodiversity. A biodiversity hotspot is a relatively small area and numerous endemic species, or species found nowhere else in the world, and a large number of endangered and threatened species. Human activity often removes nutrients from one part of the biosphere and adds them to another. Someone eating strawberries in Washington, D.C. consumes nutrients that only days before were in the soil in California. A short time later, some of these nutrients will be in the Potomac River, having passed through a person's digestive system and a local sewage treatment facility. Many rivers contaminated with nitrates and ammonium from agricultural runoff and sewage drains into the Atlantic Ocean, with the highest inputs coming from northern Europe and the central United States. The Mississippi River carries nitrogen pollution to the Gulf of Mexico, fueling a phytoplankton bloom each summer. When phytoplankton die, their decomposition by oxygen-using organisms creates an extensive dead zone of low oxygen concentrations along the Gulf Coast. Fish and other marine animals disappear from some of the most economically important waters in the United States. To reduce the size of the dead zone, farmers have begun using fertilizers more efficiently, and managers are restoring wetlands in the Mississippi watershed. Two changes simulated by the results of ecosystem experiments. Organisms acquire toxic substances from the environment along with the nutrients in water. Some of the poisons are metabolized or excreted, but others accumulate in specific tissues, often fat. One of the reasons accumulated toxins are particularly harmful is that they become more concentrated in successive trophic levels of the food web. This phenomenon, called biological magnification, occurs because the biomass at any given trophic level is produced from a much larger biomass ingested from the level below. Thus, top-level carnivores tend to be most severely affected by toxic compounds in the environment. Mercury, as a byproduct of plastic production and coal-fired power generators, has been routinely expelled into rivers and the sea in an insoluble form. Bacteria in the bottom mud convert the waste to methyl mercury, which is CH3Hg+, which is an extremely toxic water-soluble compound that accumulates in the tissues of organisms, including humans, who consume fish with the contaminated waters. Life on Earth is protected from damaging effects of UV radiation by layers of ozone. However, the chlorine-containing compounds erode the ozone layer, which is stuff you guys already know. We're going to look at the greenhouse effect, which is the absorption of heat the Earth experiences due to certain greenhouse gases. Solar energy from the sun passes through the atmosphere, and the Earth's surface is heated by the sun, and radiation the heat is back out towards space, and greenhouse gases in the atmosphere trap in some of those heat. The Earth needs this heat, but as you know, too much could be disastrous. Since the Industrial Revolution, the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has increased greatly as a result of burning of fossil fuels. For more than a century, scientists have studied how greenhouse gases warm Earth and how fossil fuels burning could contribute to the warming. Most scientists are convinced that such warming is already occurring and will increase rapidly this century. Global models predict that by the end of the 21st century, the atmospheric carbon dioxide concentration will have more than doubled, increasing average global temperature by about 3 degrees. So the approach they believe we need to take is to stabilize the use of fossil fuels and reduce deforestation. And that is the end of chapter 56.